Friday, we like to check in on what's happening in the nation's most insane state. Insane in bad ways, but also in some good ways. Of course, we're talking about Florida. It's our weekly segment, Florida Report.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Joining us is our Florida-based correspondent, my sister Miranda. We've got some good stories this week out of Florida that I love.
We do.
A follow-up. So Ron DeSantis came out, it was like, a week ago now or something. And he said, hey, we've made some arrests of mostly like convicted felons, like rapists and murderers who voted in the state of Florida who weren't supposed to. And it was a big deal because he's like, election integrity. But it turns out that maybe some of those cases have some real issues with them.
Yes, it does, actually. Miami Herald reports that cases against arrested voters on shaky legal ground as Florida issued them voter IDs.
Well, that's a problem.
That's a problem. I mean, there's bound to be some holes when you're trying to, fix something and reinstate people's voters' rights. But they actually went and arrested these people, I guess, without really checking. And I read about one guy, there's some body cam footage of him being like, voter fraud, like I'm a registered voter. And it was just like a whole confusing situation. And I don't know, I guess it's something that I hope doesn't discourage people, because I do think that like keeping tabs on voter fraud is important, but the state has to also make sure that they're doing their due diligence. So they're just showing up and ruining people's days when these people think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. The state is going to have to drop those cases. I mean, that is the lowest level of due diligence that you should do to make sure that, because this is Florida's mistake, right? If the state of Florida were to send me a voter registration card, I fill it out, it's accepted, I'm going to assume that I can vote. And I'm not going to assume that these people knew, like, oh, I got sent a voter card, I'm not supposed to have one. So, I mean, that's like the defense's exhibit A. So I'm assuming they'll dismiss those cases.
Yeah, they got to prove intent. And if somebody's like intentionally registering to vote, that's not intent to defraud the system. So I'm assuming some of these cases are going to get tossed and they're going to have to do a little work to tighten up on that end.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is this shows them, like, obviously there is a problem with the voting system in Florida that allowed these people to get valid voter registration cards. And so that needs to be fixed, but not at the expense of these people who might not have known that they were doing something wrong.
Absolutely.
I know you're probably not watching Tucker Carlson every night, although you're very good at the way you consume news because you watch a whole bunch of different things all the time.
I really do, actually. I think I'm into like just the human experience, and people fascinate me. So I like to get opinions from all different angles because, to be honest, as a 35-year-old woman, I have friends who have opinions on all different angles. And in order to keep them, I have to be open-minded. So.
Yeah. Well, which is a very good thing. People should model themselves after that practice of watching a variety of things to get to the truth. But I was watching Tucker Carlson the other night and I saw this live. And I'm a big fan of Miami's mayor, Francis Suarez. I've interviewed him a couple times, also saw him at the southern border when he was there with some other mayors from across the country. And he was on with Tucker Carlson, I'll play a clip of it here, talking about basically how Miami is bucking the trend when it comes to crime and taxes. Here's a portion of that interview.
Turns out if people are healthy, they're happy, they're working, they're not paying a lot of taxes, and they see an increased police presence, they don't have a tendency to commit murder. And that's what's been the Miami miracle story, which is a huge contrast to the Washington nightmare story that you've articulated tonight and over the last few weeks.
So let's talk about crime first, because you've lived in Miami for 10 plus years, more than that?
17 years last month.
What? Oh my gosh. Okay. I didn't realize you were that old.
It's math that I plan to stop doing, but
yeah. When you moved there, I remember coming to visit you, and there would be certain areas of town. I remember your boyfriend took us to a certain area of town where they had some really good food, and he made us stay in the car and don't get out of the car. And I remember being very scared in Miami. It was having a huge issue with shootings and homicides. So have you noticed a notable difference in the feeling of safety in Miami as a citizen?
I absolutely have. When I first moved here, the one place that I felt safe always walking around was Miami Beach. When you came back over to the mainland side in the city, the areas I lived in, the area my college was in, were in an area called Midtown, which is close to downtown. You could not walk down the street. Like, it was absolutely scary. There was street lights out. And honestly, and that was back in 2005. And since then, there has been a boom of like industry of building condos, luxury buildings, people with money coming in from different countries, investing in the city. And I think that quick change forced a lot of that crime completely out. And then in more recent years, what the mayor is talking about in this particular interview is just, he's put a lot of effort into, giving police more funding and creating more police presence. In addition to that, he focused a lot on bringing jobs to the city and lowering taxes. And he says when people have good jobs and pay less taxes and they see police around, there's not as much need for crime, And this interview also talks more about homicides. We're at a record low number of homicides. I think he says 28 for the year, which is unbelievable. He talks about, in the 80s, it was like 300, homicides. And, Miami has a really poor history of crime and violence. So it's kind of nice to be coming out on the sunny side of things.
Yeah, lowest murder rate in Miami since 1930, lowest property tax rate in Miami since like the 60s, when they started recording property tax rates, so probably the lowest in history. And also, the city of Miami has the largest budget surplus that it's ever had. And, the last time I interviewed Mayor Suarez was about his luring tech jobs to the city from cities like Seattle that had stopped appreciating those high-paying jobs. And what people don't realize is, are these bangers who'd been shooting people all of a sudden going to become techies? No. But when you have high-paying tech jobs, then you have a whole ecosystem of smaller businesses that have to support the influx of tech workers. And so you have jobs in retail, you have jobs at gyms and dog walkers and restaurants, where all these middle-class people can start to really make money. And that makes a difference. And I think that's what people don't understand. Quickly on Mayor Suarez, I've said that I think he would make a wonderful addition to a presidential ticket in 2024 as a vice president. He has floated the possibility, at least he hasn't denied it, that he might be considering a run in 2024. What do you think about that?
I think we've actually talked about this before. I think that he sits in a beautiful middle to the right area that I actually also identify with very well. And I think that's to me, what America needs right now is to come back to the middle and then just re-identify who we are when it comes to money, policy and stuff like that. And we can't do that when we have constantly candidates that pander so far left and right. So I do think that, he would be a great addition to a ticket in 2024, just, for that simple, logical, center-minded reason.
Yeah, and also he's not a household name. And I know that can make a presidential campaign really challenging, but he's very, very charming. I mean, he's good looking, which does help, even if people don't want to admit it. It helps political campaigns. But I think he could get attention very quickly, but also people don't instantly have this really hard negative perception of him, or, one way or the other, because people don't know who he is yet. So he has an opportunity to really introduce himself to the country. All right, you got one more story for us to end on. This is hilarious because I love this California-Florida beef with Gavin Newsom claiming he doesn't want to run for president and then running full-blown political ads in the state of Florida going after Ron DeSantis. Well, it turns out that some of Gavin Newsom's relatives might not hate the state of Florida as much as the governor does.
No, Fox News says Gavin Newsom's in-laws fled from California to Florida during the pandemic. I don't blame them at all. It was a great place to be for these last couple of years, but, as we were kind of talking about, it's just one of those things that you kind of want to do the research of your immediate circle before you start kicking up dust and causing problems.
Well, and it's that they didn't flee there for the weather, right? Because California and Florida, they're both beautiful places to be year round. And so they can't use that as an excuse. If you had someone who was locked down in North Dakota, but they had a vacation place in Florida. Of course, they're going to go to Florida for the lockdown. This is obviously because California was all locked down. There was nothing to do. Florida was much more open, and California was locked down because of their relative. It's so funny. Oh, that might be my favorite story ever. It's just good.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. All right, Miranda, great stuff today. Thank you so much.
Have a good weekend.
And that has been our segment, Florida Report.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.